Hello students, good morning all of you. Today I Rabindra Mohan Misra from Sri Jagdamba Sanskrit College Batho am taking the class of Shastri first. Today we see the structure of the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad. Yesterday we have seen the summary of the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad. As we know, this poem is well structured, well planned. The beautiful poem Home Thoughts from Abroad is composed by Robert Browning. Robert Browning was a great Victorian poet. Browning, after numerous failures, finally became successful and came to be known as one of the foremost Victorian poets due to his mastery of the dramatic monologue. His most notable works include Men and Women, The Ring and the Book, and dramatic romances and lyrics, among many others. This beautiful poem, Home Thoughts from Abroad, was written in 1845. At the time of its writing, the poet was in northern part of Italy. It was first published in dramatic romances and lyrics. In this very poem, the speaker speaks of his home country, England, fondly, and says how lovely it would be to live there. He begins by saying that it was April. As we know, March and April is the season of spring. The spring is known as king of season. That is why it creates a very picturesque poem. In this highly romantic picturesque poem, the speaker yearns to be in England as a springtime arrives. He imagines how those living there are lucky enough to see the trees begin to sprout as the birds begin to sing. He grows more specific as he imagines April turning to May and how the wish thrush will sing its gorgeous song twice, so nobody can think the first time was an accident of beauty. He notes that though the fields seem over done with due. Noontime will return them to their full beauty. In the last line, he laments that all of England is far brighter than this gaudy melon flower that he apparently faces wherever he currently is. This poem is Browning over here as one of the few where his concerns are primarily natural and descriptive. Certainly, much of Browning's poetry implies descriptive passages, but his primary concern is almost always men and their psychologies, with the natural passages working to complement those themes. For example, these are found in Love Among the Ruins and Childy Ronald to the Dark Tower came. As we know better that it was composed in 1845 and published in Dramatic Romances and Lyrics during a long period in which Browning and his family lived abroad in Italy. On its surface, the poem's message is quite simple. He misses home and is melancholy as he imagines the beauty that is overtaking his native country as a spring approaches. A spring as an image of flowering carries poetically the sense of the world awakening. In its celebration of this natural phenomenon, the poem owes a lot to the romantic tradition of poetry, which sought to transcend human limitations through contemplation of natural beauty. However, the poem does imply a few unique elements. First is the perspective that the poet implies. In the third line, he reveals that much of what guides his reflection is the thought of being somebody is there. In other words, he is not revealing in his own memories, but rather imagining what whoever wakes in England might say. This gives the whole descriptive poem an idealized air, a sense that what he sees in his mind is an imagining rather than an objective fact. The second stanza of this poem which is longer than the first and uses longer lines. It is the intensity of his longing as this idealized portrait takes him over. The image of the thrush who sings his song twice, lest you think he never could recapture his initial beauty, reinforces the exaggerated beauty Browning imagines. His native England does not offer priceless, once in a lifetime moments. On the contrary, it is overflowing with moments of beauty when his mind moves to a less picturesque setting. Field look rough with howdy dew. He is quick to force his imaginings so that they are redeemed by the noontide. All in all, what we glimpse is that this reflection is not a mindless wandering through the past, but rather a willful attempt to escape the gaudy melon flower that apparently falls to capture the same depth of feeling as he believes his England might. So, in the end, the poem does imply a psychological nature in that the speaker is deliberately calling to mind these images in order to distract himself from something. The placement of perspective in someone else's mind falls in line with Browning's usual poetic aesthetic and thereby compromises the objective reality of what he imagines. Finally, one is led to wonder why, considering the poet is so mournfully desperate for the English springtime, he does not think of moving back. The fact that such a thought does not enter the poem suggests that it can be understood as a momentary ideal rather than as a deep, permanent expression of the speaker's soul. As the months of springtime pass, so will this daydream, but it transcends does not mean it is insignificant.